Well then, that was pretty strange. Where did that laser even drop me? Are you fucking— Hello everyone, Oscar. I feel like game development being hard is a hard pill to swallow. Making a game is a year-long struggle that could either make or break a game. It could either be one of the most big evolution that people will talk about for years. However, with one wrong direction, it could change the entire course of development. And it could possibly lead to development hell, and that's what I'm planning to talk about. It could either be a lack of communication, it just genuinely take so long, or it's just creative differences. And let's not wait, let's get into it.
Welcome to hell, motherfucker!
So let's start this video off with a more well-known example of development hell, and that is Postal 3. Man, talk about a game that should be forgotten. Postal 3 has to be one of the worst games that I have ever created in the entire series, so what happened? Well, funny enough, it's not Running Sister's fault to create this game. In fact, they were outsourcing it because they were running out of money, and the team they decided to outsource the game is a development team called Trash Masters. Fitting name. Okay, I might be too harsh on the dev team, because in fact, both Running Sister and Trash Masters was in very good relationship. In fact, they were the exact same people who created the Crush the Rule expansion that was later bundled with some releases. And also, they did the Russian version of Postal 2. So yeah, they both have a really good relationship between one another. So what happened? So 2008 Financial Crisis rocked the world hard, and especially Trash Master Studio, parent company Akela. So in order to keep the lights on, cut would have to be made to the company somewhere. And the first cut was somehow to the team making Postal 3. Yep, they decided to fire Trash Master Studios while middle development. And somehow it got worse from here, because they decided to split Trash Master Studio into 5 divisions, and each one of them were descending in quality. So after they fired the first team, the second team were brought in, and then fired them too. And after that, the third team as well. Until the last team would get the game into a form where it didn't crash. Sometimes, until they got fired too. So 14 was fired by the time this game hit the shelf, and when it did, the reputation of this game it was hard to ignore. What can I say that I haven't said before? It's unpleasant, disgusting, annoying, frustrated, and well, unpleasant to be around. So yeah, people don't like this game, at a point that this is still the lowest game in the entire franchise. How the fuck do you imagine to beat Postal 4? Funny enough, the only people who hate Postal 3 the most is Running Resistance themselves. The fact that we're holding a bag of a glitchy, unfun, and very messy game with their iconic franchise kind of irritates them. After Akela refused to hand over the source code so they could fix it themselves, Running Resistance decided to tackle it in their own way. See, if you go to the website right now and click on Postal 3, you'll get Rickroll, but that was just after the whole game got delisted because the company decided to put DRM for some fucking reason. I wish I was joking. No, they actually put DRM on Postal 3. Anyways, before the delisting and, well, the Rickroll, the Postal 2 about page is just them apologizing and to not buy the game since A, they can't get any money for it, and B, they can't even fix it because it's not technically theirs. You know a game is bad when the companies you get the game from is trying to convince you to get something else. However, the hatred of Postal 3 didn't end there. In fact, it still continued onward after that. You see, after Postal 3 release, they made an expansion of Postal 2, basically just fixing the issue that Postal 3 created. And funny enough, they actually retconned the entire game as a weird dream from the Postal dude himself. And speaking of the Postal dude, another thing that they don't hate about the game is the VA of the Postal dude himself, Corey Cruz. After the expansion and the third game, Corey Cruz will be the main voice of the dude, even recently where he voiced him in Brain Damage in the DLC, which, funny enough, was Rick Hunter, the person who recommends Corey Cruz to begin with. So yeah, that's by far the best example of the hell. two companies tried to make a game, but due to one unfortunate event and one cutting costs, it leads to a bad game, which is unfortunate. But what if there's a mental health that's still going on, but the community themselves makes, the Silk Song fandom look sane, and leave it to, Roblox to be the most unpleasant and entitled community ever? So, Diet Death is one of those games that I don't know anything about, but I do know that the whole thing is kinda dumb. Alright, so what's going on? Why a game such as Diet Death is getting so much hate? What did the developer do? Well, that's because the game is taking so long to update. You know, I could've ended here for shits and giggles, but I need to explain myself. Alright, for context, the devs decided to overhaul the entire game to make it less of a joke game and more of a semi-serious game to play. Okay, so what's the problem? Why is there so a ton of people upset about this update taking so long? Well, that's because there are two types of camp in this situation. The first camp are people who are concerned about the dev essentially overworking themselves. And the other camp are people who are very impatient about this update taking so long. And that's what I'm planning to talk about. While yes, this first camp does have a single bad critique, I could admit that they do have some good intentions. However, with this second camp, they're mostly complaining about their steak being too juicy and their lobster too buttery. This is a big fucking problem. Okay, so what's the big issue? Well, the first issue came along when you realize how long the latest update came out. Okay, so how long did the latest update come out? Surely it cannot be that bad, right? Really? 9 months? Seriously? For a second there, I thought it was gonna be a nuke. Yeah, a lot of people don't like this update taking so long, and personally, I don't see it. Game development do take time to develop, especially if they plan to overhaul everything. That's the whole point of, overhauling, especially if the dev is a two-man team. And you know what's the worst part is? I remember seeing someone complain about how the Diet Death Discord team doesn't have a content creator role, and that team is so dumb that my friend Mo Insanity legit crashed it out how dumb it is. Don't believe me?
The Discord is pissing me off nowadays.
What? They don't need to provide that. They don't need to provide that.
Oh my god! I think I finally found them! I found the most entitled Roblox channel! I can't believe it! I found them! The most entitled Roblox player ever! I finally found them! I'll be right back.
Well, yes, it isn't technically a dub, but the hell? In fact, it was taking a reasonable amount of time. The reason why I bring this up is how really weird these critiques are, and the amount of people who hate on it about the contact is legit a nothing burger. Okay, I ordered a fucking Northing, but why there's more? Now, I know you may be wondering both, Postal and, Diet Death are two complete situations, and arguably, I could agree. However, I could argue with one thing is that they both had games that they wanted. However, with this next example, they don't. And if you know the amount of hell this game had, then you already know what game I'm talking about. And if I don't, then I'll introduce you to Shadow the Dam. Man, Shadow the Dam is having one crazy dead of time, and Depressing is version one of them. A game that's so good with ideas, but later taken away because a corporate doesn't get it. Okay, what am I talking about here? Why this game got the special treatment while the other two got none? Well, that's because it wasn't supposed to be Shadow of Dam. It was supposed to be something else. You see, this game was directed by Suda51, a game director that's basically why I enjoy Killer 7. Seriously, watch that video. Shin Mikami, creator of Resident Evil, and lastly, Akira Yakaoma, the person who made Silent Hill sound scary. Together, they originally made a game that called Kiriyami, and it was originally based on, Franz Kafka the castle. The game is supposed to be originally played as sort of like Amnesia. Basically, find a life source and don't let the darkness consume you, with some survival elements. Now that would have been a perfect and amazing horror game if the EA didn't show interest. Now the only thing that EA doesn't like is pretty much everything. Yeah, EA doesn't understand nor get what the team is going for, so they decide to change a few things here and there. So the first thing that EA demands is give the main character a gun. Alright, that isn't a bad idea. We still need to change some of the character design, but that will work. However, with that one small change, it was downhill from here. Everything that made Kiriyami unique is been stripped away, and that includes the narrative. You see, one of the EA executive told Suda about elevator pitches where it failed needs to be summarized in another elevator line. Yeah, I was listening to Hamilton a lot, and I was telling myself, man, it would be cool if it was more Greek. Great advice making movies, bad advice making games. Games are usually more younger than movies and have more ways to get their message across. Kiriyami isn't supposed to be a movie, so why did they market this way? Eventually, Shadow of Dam was created, and it was fine as a game, but lacks of the real charm of the three amazing legends. And especially with Suda51, because although created by him, it doesn't feel that he created this. So the game was released, and the game sold fine. Nothing special. However, it didn't sell EA goods, which is pretty bad, to say the least. And just like Postal 3, it leaves a stain that shouldn't be ignored. Not as bad as Postal 3, but still bad. I mean, hell, even Shigeru Mikami did an interview about the game and revealed that, well, Suda51 was quite uncomfortable making the game, which is sad to hear. But luckily, this game had a good ending. Once the game failed, EA sold the game back to Suda and released a remastered of Shadow of Dam later in 2024. And John is still ruining company to this day. Fuck you, John.
Let's find out. He's dead.
Working on something for so long only to end up walking away with negative feeling about the whole thing, while of the danger of the industry, still isn't something to be happy about. No matter how big the game is, want to make the best product they can and to come out at a project with there's nothing but disgust is sad. So that's why I will never judge book by a cover. Come on, enter the dungeon, you big old... I can't do it.